For 3,000 cycles, the Galactic Dominion had perfected the art of planetary conquest. 47 worlds had fallen before their might. 47 civilizations had looked up at their descending warships and known, with absolute certainty, that their independence was over. The Dominion did not negotiate. They did not compromise. They arrived, they conquered, and they moved on. It was a system that worked beautifully. Thank you very much. Commander Krieg stood on the bridge of the dreadnought, Fist of Eternal Subjugation, which was either a very intimidating name or compensation for something, depending on who you asked. His three eyes scanned the blue-green planet rotating peacefully below. Earth, primitive, defenseless. According to their intelligence reports, the dominant species had barely achieved interplanetary travel and still used something called social media, which sounded like a form of voluntary mental torture. "This will be our easiest conquest yet," Krieg announced to his bridge crew, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. Scans indicate no orbital defenses, no energy shields, no plasma cannons. They still use projectile weapons. Projectile weapons! How delightfully backward! Lieutenant Vorp, his second in command, nodded enthusiastically. Vorp was young, ambitious, and had never met a superior officer whose boots he would not gladly lick, metaphorically speaking. Literally speaking would have been problematic, given that Vorp did not have a tongue as humans understood it. "Shall I begin the intimidation broadcast, Commander?" Vorp asked. "Not yet. We land first. I want to see the terror in their eyes when we emerge. Select a strategic location, somewhere central to their power structure." The navigation officer, a squat being named Pluk, tapped at his console with appendages that looked like angry eggplants. "I have identified the optimal landing zone, Commander. Flat terrain, agricultural region, minimal defensive structures. The locals call it Nebraska." Krieg smiled, or at least made the facial expression his species used to indicate pleasure, which looked to human eyes like someone had startled a spider. "Excellent. Deploy the strike team. We descend in 5 clicks." What the Dominion's impressive scanning technology had failed to mention was that Nebraska, while certainly flat and agricultural, was not exactly a hub of political power. It was, in fact, the kind of place where the most exciting news in a given week was that the Johnsons had finally repainted their barn or that someone had spotted a deer near the highway. And the specific landing site that Pluk had identified as strategically optimal was the backyard of one Ethel May Patterson, age 73, retired librarian, award-winning gardener, and possessor of exactly zero patience for nonsense. The Dominion strike force of 12 warriors descended in a tactical formation that had been practiced on 47 worlds. Their armor gleamed with menace. Their weapons hummed with barely contained destruction. Their boots, specially designed for maximum intimidation, hit Ethel's lawn with a coordinated thump that should have sent terror rippling through any sentient species. Ethel, who was kneeling beside her tomato plants with a trowel, looked up with the expression of someone who had just discovered the neighborhood kids in her yard again. "Oh, for crying out loud," she muttered, pushing herself to her feet with a grunt that spoke of knees that had seen better decades. "Not again." Commander Krieg stepped forward, all 3 eyes blazing with otherworldly menace, his armor catching the late afternoon sun in a display calculated to inspire awe and submission. He raised one clawed hand dramatically to the sky. "People of Earth!" His voice boomed across the garden, amplified by his suit's external speakers. "I am Commander Krieg of the Galactic Dominion. Your world is now under our control. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be swift. Resist, and we shall grind your civilization into dust and use your monuments as decorative lawn ornaments." It was a good speech. He had been working on it during the 3-week journey. He had even practiced the dramatic pauses. Ethel squinted at him. Her hearing aid was acting up again, and all she had really caught was something about lawns and ornaments, which seemed oddly specific for what she assumed were teenagers in very elaborate Halloween costumes. "Young man," she said, because everyone under 60 was young to Ethel, and Krieg was only 473. "I do not know what kind of game you think you are playing, but you are standing on my tomatoes." Krieg blinked all 3 eyes in sequence, which was his species equivalent of a confused double-take. "Your tomatoes?" "Yes, my tomatoes. The ones you are crushing with your ridiculous boots. Do you have any idea how long it takes to grow a good beefsteak tomato? Clearly not, or you would not be stomping around like you own the place." She turned to her shed, which leaned slightly to the left, and had not seen a fresh coat of paint since the Reagan administration. She emerged moments later with a broom that had seen action in at least 3 decades of stubborn dirt removal. "Now shoo, go on." Get out of my garden before I call your mothers." And with that, Grandma Ethel, armed with nothing but a broom and absolute confidence in her authority over her own backyard, advanced on the most feared military force in the known galaxy. Lieutenant Vorp looked at Commander Krieg. Commander Krieg looked at Lieutenant Vorp. 47 worlds had surrendered by this point in the invasion protocol. None of them had deployed brooms. In the extensively detailed invasion manual that every Dominion officer studied at the Academy, there were protocols for approximately 863 different scenarios. Resistance by primitive projectile weapons, biological warfare, electromagnetic pulses, kamikaze attacks, desperate last-stand speeches about freedom and dignity. Even, in one memorable case, trained war beasts that turned out to be much larger than anticipated. Nowhere in those 863 scenarios was there a protocol for being aggressively shooed by an elderly woman with cleaning equipment. Commander Krieg found himself taking an involuntary step backward as Ethel advanced. Broom raised like a weapon that had seen considerable action against dust bunnies and perhaps the occasional spider. His tactical computer was flashing warnings, but they were all variations of unknown threat approaching, which was technically accurate but profoundly unhelpful. "Ma'am," he attempted, trying to regain control of the situation. "I do not think you understand the gravity of what is happening here. We are an advanced military force from beyond your solar system. We have conquered 47 worlds. We possess weapons that could level your entire continent in moments." Ethel paused, squinting at him again. She really needed to get that hearing aid looked at, but the appointment was not until Thursday, and she was not about to reschedule for some cosplayers in her garden. "Weapons? What weapons? All I see is a bunch of grown people in fancy costumes ruining my vegetables. Is this one of those flash mob things my grandson keeps talking about? Because I did not sign up for this, and you are not filming anything in my yard without permission." She punctuated this statement with a warning swish of the broom, close enough to Krieg's helmet that his threat assessment systems went completely haywire. Lieutenant Vorp, who had been trained since hatching to protect his commander at all costs, made the fatal mistake of stepping forward to intercede. "Commander Krieg is trying to explain that we are here to conquer your planet and subjugate your species to the will of the Galactic Dominion, and honestly, you should be terrified, right? Now, because we are very intimidating and thwack." The broom connected with Vorp's helmet with a sound that would have been comical if it were not so utterly devastating to Dominion morale. Vorp stumbled backward, more from shock than actual injury, directly into Trooper Klax, who had been attempting to look menacing in the rear formation. Both aliens went down in a tangle of advanced body armor and wounded pride. "I do not care if you are from the Galactic Dominion or the County Fair," Ethel declared, advancing another step. "You are in my garden without permission. You have crushed at least 3 tomato plants that I can see, and that looks suspiciously like alien boot print on my prize zucchini." She pointed the broom at what was indeed a footprint on a zucchini that had been well on its way to winning a blue ribbon at the County Fair next month. The zucchini was now approximately 20% flatter than optimal. "That zucchini was going to be a champion," Ethel continued, her voice taking on the dangerous calm of someone who had raised 3 children through their teenage years and was therefore immune to nonsense. "Do you know what the prize money is for champion zucchini? $50 and a ribbon. I was going to use that money to buy more tomato cages. Thanks to you people, I now have to start over with a backup zucchini that is frankly mediocre." Commander Krieg had participated in the siege of Thalaxia Prime, where he had faced down warriors who literally breathed fire. He had led the assault on the crystalline fortresses of Zendar, where the defenders could reshape matter with their thoughts. He had personally accepted the surrender of the High Chancellor of Vec, a being so intimidating that most species needed therapy just from looking at their official portrait. Not one of those experiences had prepared him for the withering disappointment in Ethel's eyes as she surveyed her damaged vegetables. "Retreat," he heard himself saying. "Strategic. Withdrawal. Back to the ship. Now." "But Commander," Vorp protested from the ground, still tangled with Klax. "The invasion protocol states that we must establish a perimeter and—" "I said now, Lieutenant." The strike team scrambled back toward their landing craft with considerably less coordination than they had displayed on arrival. Trooper Miz tripped over a garden gnome that Ethel had placed near her petunias. Sergeant Thoop accidentally activated his personal shield, which immediately shorted out after coming into contact with Ethel's sprinkler system. By the time they reached the safety of their ship, they looked less like a feared military force, and more like a group of teenagers fleeing after a doorbell prank had gone wrong. From the command deck, Krieg watched through external cameras as Ethel calmly returned to her gardening, pausing only to right the tomato cages they had knocked over during their hasty departure. "Status report," he said quietly. Vorp, still recovering, his dignity, checked his tactical display. 0 casualties on either side. Mission parameters not achieved. Enemy combatant remains in possession of strategic location. Also, sir, I believe I may have a bruise shaped like a broom handle across my anterior thorax. That was not an enemy combatant, Krieg said slowly. That was a civilian. An elderly civilian. With a broom. The bridge crew exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their collective confusion. Respectfully, Commander, Vorp ventured. What exactly just happened? Krieg stared at the view screen, where Ethel was now watering her surviving plants with a hose, apparently having already forgotten about the alien invasion that had occurred in her backyard approximately 4 minutes earlier. I have absolutely no idea, Lieutenant. But we are going to figure it out before we make our next move. Contact the science division. I want a full psychological profile of that human. There is clearly something about this species we did not account for in our initial assessment. And the invasion, sir? Krieg's mandibles clicked in what might have been frustration. Postponed. Temporarily. Until we understand what we are dealing with. Below, Ethel picked up her prize-winning zucchini, examined the boot print with a sigh, and carried it inside. She had some casserole to make, and she was not about to let a bunch of weirdos in costumes ruin her afternoon schedule. The Galactic Dominion had just experienced its first tactical retreat in 3,000 cycles. The weapon of choice. One broom, circa 1,987. Purchased at a hardware store that no longer existed. Commander Krieg did not sleep that night. This was partly because his species only required sleep every 72 hours, but mostly because he was having what humans would call an existential crisis, and what his people called a tactical reassessment of fundamental operational assumptions. He had watched the recordings of their encounter with Ethel approximately 47 times. This was either thorough analysis or obsessive behavior, depending on whether you asked him or his ship's counselor. There has to be something we are missing, he muttered, rewinding to the moment where Ethel had swatted Vorp with the broom for the 19th time. No species simply ignores a Dominion invasion force. It defies all statistical models of sentient behavior. Lieutenant Vorp, who had been summoned to the command deck at what humans would call 3 in the morning, tried to look alert despite nursing both his wounded pride and his bruised thorax. Perhaps she is some kind of elite warrior? Earth's ultimate champion? Placed in that location specifically to repel invaders? Krieg considered this. It would certainly make more sense than the alternative, which was that they had been completely dismissed by a random civilian who cared more about vegetables than her own planetary security. Deploy the intimidation drones, Krieg decided. But, this time, we maintain our distance. We observe. We adapt. We learn. Which is how, at 6:30 the following morning, Ethel found herself staring at 3 floating spheres hovering above her tomato plants. Each sphere was approximately the size of a basketball, covered in what appeared to be very aggressive-looking spikes, and emitting a low hum that probably sounded menacing if you were the sort of person who found robot vacuums intimidating. Ethel set down her coffee mug on the porch railing and squinted at the drones. Her grandson Tommy had mentioned something about getting her a drone for Christmas, so she could inspect her roof without climbing a ladder. These must be an early delivery, though they seemed unnecessarily spiky for roof inspection. Well, she said to herself, that boy does think of everything. Aboard the ship, Krieg watched with satisfaction as the drones moved into an attack formation pattern that had terrified populations across the galaxy. Each drone was equipped with enough firepower to demolish a small building, though they were currently set to intimidate rather than obliterate. The plan was to demonstrate overwhelming force, convince the human to evacuate the area, and then establish a proper command post. Ethel walked to her shed and emerged with a butterfly net that she had purchased last summer to deal with an aggressive hornet situation. The net had a telescoping handle that could extend up to 12 feet, which seemed about right for these new roof inspection drones. "Let me just bring you boys down so I can read the instruction manual," she said pleasantly, extending the net toward the nearest drone. "Commander," Vorp said urgently, watching his tactical display with growing alarm. "The human is approaching drone Alpha with some kind of capture device. Impossible. Those drones have automated evasion protocols. They have never been captured by swoop." Ethel, who had spent 40 years catching books that students had thrown across the library, had excellent hand-eye coordination for a woman her age. The drone, which had been programmed to dodge plasma fire and missile locks, had absolutely no protocol for dealing with a butterfly net. It attempted to compensate by firing its thrusters, which only succeeded in tangling it more thoroughly in the netting. "Got you," Ethel said with satisfaction, reeling in the struggling drone like a particularly technological fish. Now let me just put you somewhere safe until I can figure out how you work. She carried Drone Alpha to her shed, placed it on a shelf between a bag of fertilizer and some paint cans from 1993, and closed the door. The drone's distress signal was extremely loud to Dominion sensors, but made absolutely no sound that human ears could detect, which meant Ethel returned to her coffee, completely unaware that she had just captured military hardware worth approximately 8 million credits. "Status of Drone Alpha?" Krieg asked, his voice very calm in the way that suggested internal screaming. "Captured, sir. Signal is stable, but location is. It appears to be in some kind of storage facility, possibly a weapons depot." "A weapons depot. Well, it is either that, or she keeps her military equipment next to gardening supplies, sir." Krieg stared at the screen. Drones Beta and Gamma were still hovering over the tomatoes, apparently paralyzed by confusion about what had just happened to their companion. Recall them, now, before she collects the complete set. But Ethel, having successfully dealt with what she thought was one drone, had already lost interest in the other two. She had watering to do, and the morning was getting warm. Aboard the ship, Krieg made a decision that would have been unthinkable 24 hours earlier. He activated the emergency beacon, the one reserved for situations where a Dominion force required immediate backup due to overwhelming resistance. "This is Commander Krieg of the Fist of Eternal. Subjugation requesting immediate reinforcement. Enemy has demonstrated unexpected tactical capabilities. Recommend deployment of additional units to establish secure perimeter." The response came back within minutes. High Command was dispatching 3 more ships with a combined force of 200 warriors. They would arrive within 6 hours. In the meantime, Krieg was ordered to maintain surveillance and avoid further engagement, which is how Ethel came to find a small alien armada parked above her property by lunchtime, just as she was setting up her folding table on the back porch with a pitcher of lemonade and some cookies she had baked the previous evening. She looked up at the ships, shrugged, and poured herself a glass. If these were Tommy's friends doing some kind of elaborate special effects project, they were certainly committed to the bit. She had to admire that level of dedication, even if they had picked a terrible spot for filming. When the second wave of Dominion forces landed in her backyard at precisely 1300 hours, arranged in a formation that had never failed to inspire surrender, Ethel waved at them pleasantly from her porch chair. "You boys look hot in all that armor," she called out. "I have lemonade if you want some. Fresh squeezed this morning." The lead officer, a decorated veteran named Commander Zrax who had participated in 23 planetary conquests, slowly turned to look at Commander Krieg. "That," Krieg said quietly, "is what we are dealing with." Zrax stared at Ethel, who was now offering a plate of cookies to the nearest warrior, apparently oblivious to the fact that his weapon could vaporize her entire house. "Commander Krieg," Zrax said slowly, "what exactly have you gotten us into?" "Honestly," Krieg replied, watching as 2 more warriors hesitantly approached the porch to accept cookies, "I have absolutely no idea." High Command was not going to like this report. High Command was not going to like this report at all. But the cookies were apparently excellent, because Krieg could see his warriors actually removing their helmets to eat them, which was definitely not in the invasion protocol manual. By 3 in the afternoon, Ethel's backyard looked less like a strategic military operation and more like a bizarre tailgate party where half the attendees happened to be extraterrestrial. 17 Dominion warriors were now sitting on her lawn, helmets removed, eating cookies and drinking lemonade while trying to process what had gone wrong with their lives. Commander Zrax stood beside Commander Krieg, both of them watching this scene with the hollow-eyed stare of military officers watching their careers dissolve in real time. "So let me understand this correctly," Zrax said slowly. "You called for emergency reinforcements because a civilian offered you baked goods. That is an extremely reductive summary of events, Commander. And your strike team retreated because she had a broom. A very aggressive broom. And she captured one of our intimidation drones with a net. In my defense," Krieg said weakly. "It happened very quickly. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion from the street. A woman in yoga pants and a visor that said, 'Live, laugh, love' was marching up Ethel's driveway with the purposeful stride of someone about to speak to a manager. This was Karen Hendrickson, president of the Meadowbrook Acres Homeowners Association, and she had opinions. Ethel May Patterson. Karen's voice could have cut glass. "What is the meaning of this?" Ethel looked up from refilling the lemonade pitcher. "Hello, Karen. Would you like a cookie?" "I would not like a cookie. I would like to know why there are spaceships parked over your property in direct violation of HFY regulations. Section 7, subsection C. which clearly states that no homeowner may park recreational vehicles, boats, or aircraft on their property without written approval from the board. Commander Zrax leaned toward Krieg. What is an HOA? I have no idea, but I think we should be concerned. Karen was now photographing the Dominion warships with her phone. This is completely unacceptable. I am calling the police, the FAA, and possibly the news. You cannot just have aliens in your backyard without proper permits. They are not my aliens, Karen, Ethel said with the patience of someone who had been dealing with HOA complaints for 15 years. They just showed up. What am I supposed to do? Tell them to park on the street? Yes, that is exactly what you should do. The street is public property. One of the Dominion warriors, a young trooper named Fleck who had been enjoying his third cookie, made the mistake of standing up to get a better view of this confrontation. Karen's head snapped toward him like a predator spotting prey. And another thing, your people have been sitting on Ethel's lawn for hours. Do you have any idea what that does to grass? I can already see the compression marks. The property values in this neighborhood are going to plummet. Fleck, who had faced down armed insurgents on 4 different worlds, actually took a step backward. Ma'am, Commander Zrax attempted, using his most diplomatic voice. We are conducting a military operation here. Perhaps you could return to your residence and… Military operation? In a residential neighborhood? Without notifying the HOA? I do not think so. She was now filming everything, providing what would eventually become the most watched TikTok video in human history, though nobody knew that yet. This is Karen Hendrickson reporting live from Meadowbrook Acres, where apparently aliens can just show up and violate zoning ordinances without any consequences. While Karen was establishing herself as humanity's most unexpected first contact representative, another vehicle pulled up to the curb. This one was a Honda Civic with a cracked windshield and a bumper sticker that read, "My other car is also terrible." Out stepped Tommy Patterson, age 24, software developer, gamer, and the only member of Ethel's family who actually understood what was happening. He took one look at the scene, the alien warships, his grandmother offering lemonade to extraterrestrials, and Karen filming everything while shouting about property values, and he said the most reasonable thing possible under the circumstances. Oh, fuck. He sprinted across the lawn, dodging confused aliens and ignoring Karen's demands that he explain himself to the HOA board. Grandma, those are actual aliens. Real ones, not costumes. Ethel patted his hand. That is nice, dear. Would you like some lemonade? I made extra. Grandma, I am serious. These are actual extraterrestrial beings with actual spaceships and probably actual weapons that could kill everyone on Earth. Do not be dramatic, Tommy. They have been very polite. Much better behaved than the Henderson boys who trampled my roses last. Summer. Tommy turned to the nearest alien, who happened to be Commander Krieg. Please tell me you are not here to invade Earth. Krieg's mandibles clicked uncomfortably. Well, technically, that was the initial objective, yes. Oh my God. However, we are currently reassessing our strategic approach due to unforeseen complications. Unforeseen complications? You mean my grandmother? Among other factors, yes. Tommy ran his hands through his hair, a gesture that Krieg recognized from his cultural database as indicating extreme stress. Okay. Let me explain something to you. That woman right there? She survived the Great Depression as a child, raised 3 kids on a librarian's salary, and once drove 400 miles through a blizzard because she promised she would make it to my school play. She does not get intimidated because intimidation requires acknowledging that something is more important than whatever she has already decided to do that day. Yes, Krieg said, slowly. We are beginning to understand that. And you know what else? She is not special. She is just a regular human. We are all like this, every single one of us. We survived ice ages with nothing but pointy sticks and attitude. We invented civilization because we were bored. We looked at the moon and said, I bet we could go there, and then we did it with computers that had less processing power than the phone in my pocket. Krieg was listening now. Really listening. And something cold was settling in his midsection. Tommy was on a roll. You know what humans did during one of our worst plagues? We invented new dances and made videos of them. During our world wars, we painted pinup girls on our bombers and called them names like the Memphis Belle. We turned our apocalypses into entertainment. We are not logical. We are not predictable. We are absolutely insane, and we do not know when to quit. He is right, you know, Ethel added, refilling Tommy's glass even though he had not asked for lemonade. We are a very stubborn species. At that moment, Karen's voice rose above everything else. And furthermore, I will be filing a formal complaint about noise violations. Those ships have been humming all afternoon. Commander Zrax turned to Krieg. Commander, I think we need to have a serious discussion about the viability of this invasion. Before Krieg could respond, there was a concerning whirring sound from inside Ethel's house. Tommy's face went pale. Grandma, where did you put those drone things you mentioned on the phone? In the house, dear. I was trying to figure out how to turn them on so I could read the instruction manual. Did you, by any chance, press any buttons? Well, yes. I pressed several. Why? The whirring sound intensified, followed by a crash, a bang, and the distinct sound of something expensive breaking. Because, Tommy said, already running toward the house, those are not drones from Amazon. Smoke began pouring out of Ethel's kitchen window. The captured drone, after being poked and prodded for several hours, had finally activated its self-destruct protocol as a last resort. Unfortunately, it was currently sitting on a shelf next to Ethel's collection of decorative plates from every state she had visited, which was all 50 of them. The explosion was not large enough to destroy the house, but it was definitely large enough to destroy the plates, blow out 3 windows, and completely vaporize Ethel's kitchen table. Ethel looked at the smoke, then at Commander Krieg, then back at the smoke. Young man, she said, her voice taking on a tone that Tommy recognized as the precursor to serious consequences. Did your little toy just blow up my kitchen? Krieg, who had stared down planetary governors without flinching, found himself actually stammering. It was set to self-destruct as a security measure in case of capture, and I apologize profusely, and we will absolutely compensate you for any damages. You most certainly will. That table was from my mother. And just like that, the Galactic Dominion found itself not conquering Earth, but rather negotiating reparations with a 73-year-old woman over destroyed furniture, while a member of the HOA filmed everything and demanded they fill out proper insurance claim forms. 47 worlds had fallen to the Dominion. Earth was not even taking them seriously. Commander Krieg sat on what remained of Ethel's porch steps, his armor scorched from helping extinguish the kitchen fire, and experienced what humans called a moment of clarity. It was not a pleasant experience. Around him, the scene had devolved into something that would haunt Dominion military academies for generations. Commander Zrax was arguing with Karen about proper incident report procedures. Lieutenant Vorp was helping Tommy salvage what remained of Ethel's plates while apologizing profusely. 3 Dominion troopers were receiving a lecture from Ethel about fire safety, and at least 40 neighbors had arrived, drawn by the commotion, and were now treating the entire situation like a block party. Oh my stars, are those real aliens? This was Marge Kowalski, Ethel's best friend, and a woman who had not let being 71 slow down her social life one bit. She walked right up to Commander Krieg, looked him up and down with the appraising eye of someone who had been single for 5 years and was not afraid of a little extraterrestrial romance, and smiled. Well, are not you interesting looking? Krieg's translator struggled with the tone. It was registering somewhere between friendly greeting and predatory interest, and he was not sure which was more alarming. I am Commander Krieg of the Galactic Dominion, he said reflexively. I have conquered 47 worlds. Have you now? Marge settled onto the step beside him, closer than military protocol would recommend. That sounds exhausting. Have you tried yoga? It is wonderful for stress. What? Yoga, stretching, breathing exercises. You seem very tense for someone who is supposed to be conquering things. She patted his armored shoulder. You are doing it wrong, sweetie. Doing what wrong? Everything, from the looks of it. She gestured at the chaos. You show up to invade, and within 24 hours, you are sitting on my best friend's porch looking like you have had an existential crisis. That is not conquering. That is flailing. Tommy, overhearing this, started laughing. It was the slightly hysterical laughter of someone whose reality had broken and reassembled itself into a shape that made no sense whatsoever. She is right, Tommy said, walking over with a box of salvaged plate fragments. You want to know why you cannot invade Earth? It is not because we have better weapons. We do not. It is not because we are smarter. We are arguably pretty stupid most of the time. It is because we have spent our entire existence being absolutely pummeled by reality, and we just keep getting back up. He sat down on Krieg's other side, effectively trapping the commander between a flirting senior citizen and an exhausted programmer. Ice ages. We invented fire and wore dead animals. Plagues. We invented medicine. World wars. We rebuilt and made international pizza chains. Someone invents the internet. We immediately use it for cat videos and arguing with strangers. We are cockroaches, man. Unkillable. Adaptable. and too stubborn to know when we are beaten. Plus, Marge added, we invented casserole. I brought one, by the way. She held up a dish covered in aluminum foil. Green bean casserole. You boys look hungry. Commander Zrax, having finally escaped Karen's lecture about proper documentation, approached the group. Commander Krieg, we need to make a decision. High Command is requesting a status update. Krieg looked at the casserole. He looked at his warriors, who were now being fed by multiple neighbors who had brought various dishes. He looked at Ethel, who was showing one of his troopers how to properly replant a tomato. He looked at Karen, who was still filming and had apparently started a live stream with 17,000 viewers. Tell High Command, Krieg said slowly, that Earth is not a viable target for invasion. Sir, this species is not advanced because of their technology. They are advanced because they are completely, utterly, irredeemably insane, and they do not even realize it. They treat apocalyptic scenarios as minor inconveniences. They respond to overwhelming military force with baked goods and unsolicited advice. They argue with invaders about property values. He gestured at the crowd of neighbors, who were now organizing an impromptu potluck around several Dominion landing craft. Look at them, Zrax. They know we could destroy this entire continent. They do not care. They are more concerned about whether we have tried the potato salad. This is not courage. This is not strategy. This is something we have never encountered before, and I do not think we are equipped to handle it. So we are retreating? We are making a strategic withdrawal based on updated intelligence about the target species. Krieg stood, his armor creaking. And we are updating the Dominion database to mark this planet as a Level 9 threat. Level 9? Sir, that designation is reserved for species that have destroyed multiple invasion forces. Exactly. Krieg looked at Marge, who winked at him. They have not destroyed us through violence. They have destroyed us through weaponized hospitality and a complete refusal to acknowledge that they should be afraid. That is somehow worse. Tommy nodded. Yeah, that sounds about right for humanity. Ethel approached with a plate of cookies wrapped in plastic wrap. Commander, you are not leaving without snacks for your trip. It is a long way back to wherever you came from. Krieg accepted the cookies because refusing would have been more terrifying than accepting. Thank you, ma'am. And again, we apologize for your kitchen. You apologize by sending someone to fix it. I have already given your lieutenant my email address. You have email? Of course I have email. How else would I send photos to my grandchildren? She said this as if it were the most obvious thing in the world, which somehow made it worse. As the Dominion forces began their withdrawal, Karen shouted after them, You still need to file proper incident reports. I have the forms. Krieg did not look back. He could not. If he looked back, he might see the entire human species for what it really was. Utterly unconquerable not because they were strong, but because they were too weird to follow any predictable pattern of behavior. The Galactic Dominion was retreating. The weapon that defeated them, casserole, property value concerns, and one grandmother who cared more about her tomatoes than her own survival. 47 worlds had fallen. Earth had not even noticed it was in danger. 3 days later, Commander Krieg stood before the Galactic High Command, which consisted of 7 of the most intimidating beings in known space, and delivered a report that would fundamentally alter the Dominion's expansion policy for the next 1,000 cycles. In summary, he concluded, humanity represents an unprecedented threat level not due to technological superiority, but due to complete psychological unpredictability, combined with weaponized social convention and an apparent immunity to intimidation. The Supreme Chancellor, a being whose species communicated primarily through bioluminescent displays that usually signaled extreme displeasure, flickered in a pattern that Krieg's translator interpreted as, explain further. They fed us, Your Excellency. Multiple times, they offered us beverages. They lectured us about property damage and insurance protocols. One of them attempted to recruit me into something called a book club. At no point did. They acknowledged that we were a legitimate threat to their existence. And the human designated Ethel Patterson? Still tending her garden, last we observed. We did send a construction team to repair her kitchen, as promised. She gave them more cookies and asked if they could also fix a loose step on her porch. They did. I do not know why they did, but they did. The Supreme Chancellor's display shifted to what might have been curiosity or possibly indigestion. Recommendation? Add Earth to the exclusion list immediately. Designated as a Level 9 threat with a special advisory warning about elder female humans. They appear to be the apex predators of the species, though frankly, all of them seem equally dangerous in ways we cannot adequately categorize. The council conferred briefly through various means of communication that did not translate well. Finally, the Chancellor's display showed acceptance. Approved. The Dominion will avoid Earth and its solar system indefinitely. Let other species learn this lesson if they choose. We have 47 conquered worlds. We do not need a 48th that badly. Back on Earth, Ethel won first place at the county fair with her backup zucchini, which had flourished after she had started using what she described as space-age fertilizer that Lieutenant Vorp had left behind as part of the reparations package. The judges were extremely impressed with its size and had no idea it was technically a violation of several intergalactic treaties regarding technology transfer. Tommy became a minor celebrity after the footage went viral, appearing on 3 podcasts and 1 news program to discuss humanity's first contact. He spent most of the interviews trying to explain that his grandmother was not a secret government operative, just a regular person who did not get easily flustered. Nobody believed him. Karen Hendrickson successfully got extraterrestrial vehicles added to the HOA regulations under Section 7, Subsection C, Paragraph 4. The monthly dues went up by $15 to cover the cost of printing new rulebooks. She considered this a significant personal victory. Marge Kowalski kept Commander Krieg's email address and sent him periodic messages, asking how he was doing and whether the Dominion had considered implementing better work-life balance policies. Krieg never responded, but he did read them, and he did eventually start a meditation practice that his ship's counselor said was very healthy given recent traumatic events. As for Ethel, she replaced her mother's kitchen table with a new one, planted another row of tomatoes, and occasionally looked up at the stars while watering her garden in the evening. Nice boys, she would say to herself. A bit dramatic, but nice. 6 months later, a different alien species approached Earth's orbit with preliminary invasion plans. They were the Raccoons Collective, a hive mind known for their efficiency and ruthless expansion across 12 star systems. Their scout ship detected the warning beacon that the Dominion had left in Earth's orbital space. The message was brief and, by galactic standards, absolutely unprecedented. Warning: Planet Earth, Sol System. Designation: Do not engage. Threat level: 9. Species achievement: Defeated Dominion invasion force with baked goods, passive aggression, and complete refusal to acknowledge danger. Recommend extreme caution. Elder female humans particularly dangerous. Approach at own risk. Seriously, just do not. We tried. It went badly. Commander Krieg, Galactic Dominion. The Raccoons Collective debated for approximately 4 seconds, which was a very long time for a hive mind, and then altered course for a different star system. They had conquered 12 worlds through perfect coordination and overwhelming force. They were not about to risk it against a species that had somehow defeated the Dominion with cookies. Back on Earth, completely unaware that she had just prevented a second invasion through reputation alone, Ethel settled into her porch chair with a cup of tea and the latest mystery novel from her book club. Her tomatoes were coming in beautifully this year. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity was not to be trifled with, not because they were strong, but because they were absolutely, magnificently, dangerously unbothered by things that should terrify them. And somewhere in deep space, in the official Galactic Dominion military archives, there existed a training video that every new officer was required to watch. It was titled The Nebraska Incident, a case study in assuming your target species will follow logical behavioral patterns. The video ended with footage of Ethel offering Commander Krieg cookies. It had a 100% effectiveness rate at making officers reconsider the wisdom of invading primitive-looking planets. 47 worlds had fallen to the Dominion. Earth had simply offered them lemonade and gone back to gardening. In the end, that was the most terrifying thing of all.